I can remember in one movie, I thought, it's impossible. He dove off of the Golden Gate Bridge and survived.
That is pretty close to impossible.
He had pigtails, and I pull on them, dip them in the inkwell. So there were 4 of us at the site, and you guys were well protected here. We were drunker than skunks.
Put on your helmets and buckle your chin straps for the wildest podcast held in the Steel City. Dubs and Chickenhawk will give you a taste of the past in fried jumbo.
When I registered for the draft, and that was during the Korean War, I told him, I said, just move my name up to the top of the list and let me go so I can get on with life. And but it still took 2 years for him to get to me.
Wow.
But I went and served my time. I went to Alaska. Well, went to Texas after basic in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and El Paso, Texas. And then when my granddad died, I came home for the funeral. And when I reported back into the orderly room, the CQ was on a Saturday. He said, "You better take a look at the overseas duty roster." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because your name's the top one on the list." And I looked at it and it said I was assigned to Fort Richardson, Alaska. And I told him, I said, if they try to put me on skis, they're going to have to court-martial me. Because when I was 10 years old, I tried to ski and ended up with a concussion and a chipped elbow. And I said, no, never again. And he said, no, you'll be all right. So when I got to Alaska, I reported to Fort Richardson, and they said, don't even take your duffel bag and stuff off the truck because we're transferring you to Elmendorf Air Force Base. So I spent my time up in Alaska as Army assigned to the Air Force. We had anti-aircraft guns. We were the last of the anti-aircraft guns. After that, the missiles came in.
So you would be stationed up there in case someone was coming over from the other part of the world, and you would shoot them down.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we practiced all the time with our guns in the radar. I was a radar operator. Supposedly, I was an artillery mechanic to repair the guns, but I ended up being the radar operator because we needed one, and it was easy to learn.
Yeah.
And,
easy for you to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. I used to sit out there by the hour and watch the planes and stuff. Our radar had a range of 26,000 yards, and our gun only had a range of 24,000 yards. So I could see it, and I would practice all the time. And when other outfits were going out to the range to fire to qualify, I'd sit there at my radar, and I would track their rounds and so on. And so I have great difficulty understanding the stealth plane because it has supposedly a target of a bird. And if I can lock onto a 50 caliber machine gun bullet, I can sure as hell lock onto a bird that's flying 600 mile an hour.
Yeah, but they can't see the stealth on the radar, right?
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah.
I doubt that.
Yeah. So with the radar, you could actually see bullets then.
I used to watch the 20 millimeter rounds and the 75 millimeter rounds going out, and the 120s.
Yeah, and that's what year? 50?
53, 54.
Right.
So when they would shoot these guns, what were they shooting at? Just at certain areas in the...
No, they would have drones up.
Oh, drones. I was wondering how they could do that.
They were called RCATs. They were actually little miniature airplanes, and they had 4-cylinder engines on them. And they would launch them, and they'd take them off, and then we would try to pick them up and
Shoot him down.
Shoot him
shoot
down.
Wow.
And our site was the first site to get 100% in proficiency at the site, and also 100% proficiency at the range. We were supposed to fire a course of 8 rounds at the drones when we were on target, and usually after this 3rd round, we'd get an order to cease fire because we'd shot it down.
Wow.
It's gone.
That accurate, huh?
Now, did they have these kind of guns or bases all over the West Coast, or
They had them everywhere.
everywhere? Even everywhere.
On top of hotels in Chicago and New York. And
Just to
everyplace
protect
else.
from the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea that.
I had a buddy that I was with down in El Paso. Spent his time living in a hotel room in Chicago because the gun was up on the roof.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wild.
But
So they just had them all over the
yeah,
United States then.
oh yeah, they were everywhere.
Now, do you remember, I guess, you would have, now you wouldn't have, that was after World War II. What was like your earliest news memory of something really happening big in the world? Do you have any recollection?
Well, I can remember the Sunday of Pearl Harbor very clearly.
So you were 7 years old.
Yeah, we were set.
8. We were set 34.
7.
7 years old, right?
We were sitting in the living room on a Sunday afternoon, and they broke in on the radio station. I don't know what station we were listening to.
Right.
Probably some mystery theater or something like that. And they broke in and said that Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
And there would be more information. And then I can remember my mother crying because my 2 older brothers were 18 and 17 at that time. So, or 19 and 17. And they both enlisted in 42. One brother was in the Army Air Corps, and the other one was in the Navy. The one in the Navy was on the carrier Ranger, which was the first carrier that was actually designed as an aircraft carrier from the keel up. What you had to do, like when I went to the service, if they would have assigned me to Korea, I would have gone. But by the time I was in, most of the shooting was done. They were in that stupid year and a half of negotiations over who owns this hill and who owns that hill and so on.
Oh.
But I had my best friend. He and I went into service together, and we went through basic, and we went down to advanced training. He went to the artillery batteries to learn to be an artillery man, and I went to the headquarters to learn how to repair the artillery, and then I became an instructor down there and taught classes on repairing the guns. And then, as I said, when my granddad died, I got transferred to Alaska. And then while I was in Alaska, my dad died. And while I was still in Alaska, then my grandma, Yatsko, died.
How did they all pass? Were they all ill with different conditions?
My granddad had colon cancer. And in 1955,
You couldn't do nothing.
That was a death
Sentence.
And my dad, in the Yatsko family, there is a blood disorder called antithrombin 3 deficiency. So we form blood clots just for the fun of it. So that's what killed my dad. Blood clot.
Stroke.
Ruptured his intestines.
Oh my.
And I got home from Alaska in time to tell him I was home, and I'd be there till he got better. And he said, okay. And that was the last words he said. And 3 days later, he died.
Wow.
So
And my grandma Yatsko, after she lost both of them, my mother had her put in Torrance. I don't know if you know where Torrance
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
is. You know?
Yeah.
The state hospital.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was home, and when my dad died, and I had a 30-day leave, so I got to go up and see my grandma Yatsko up in Torrance, and she saw me. She just hugged me, as best she could with one arm, and
yeah,
cried all the time. But
yeah,
it was tough. And then she passed away, so actually I didn't get to, well, I got to see my granddad's funeral. I did not get to see my grandmother's funeral. They wouldn't let me come home for it.
well, just too many, and
There's too many.
wow,
But the strange thing was when I got out of the service, the mustering out pay, I got paid for 60 days of leave. When I used up more than that with my dad and my granddad and coming home before I went to Alaska, I got paid for all 60 days of leave time. And Alaska was overseas pay, so I got an extra $50 a month for that. And
yeah,
then I took care of the ammunition for our site, so I got an extra $75 a month for that. So I was making more money doing other things than I was as a PFC.
When you were a kid, I mean, you didn't have TV. Who? Any?
They did radio, right? You had radio.
Yes, yeah, celebrities. Who was the big celebrity then?
To me, it was the Pittsburgh Pirates, Ralph Kiner, and
Okay.
Yeah.
that whole group there. I actually saw Ron Netchai, who was from Monongahela, win his only game in the major leagues. I was there.
At Forbes Field.
He beat Boston, and I would go. You could get into the game for $5, and I sat behind third base, behind the dugouts.
Yeah,
We watched a lot of games. Saw Ralph Kiner hit a home run. I thought, geez. That's nothing. Anybody can hit a ball 320 feet. But he did hit some over the fence to the right of the scoreboard as well, which were
out of the stadium.
Yeah, 400 and some feet. Yeah. Was there big radio programs that you all sat around and listened to?
Every night I listened to the radio programs, and I read all my dad's mechanics magazines and
That's how you figured all this stuff out.
engineering magazines and books and so on. So I think I was always destined not to be on the farm, even though, and I would listen at nights to the Pirates baseball games when they were in St. Louis, because I had a little radio and I could pick up KMOX out of St. Louis and listen to the game live while I was listening to Rosie Rosewell describe the game off of a ticker tape. And
That's wild.
just,
Good memory there, I bet, huh?
yeah, lots of fun, lots of crazy things.
Yeah. Do you ever go to the movies or anything, being on a farm?
Yeah, my mother liked to play bingo, so she would go to the Eagles, Elks Hall in Canonsburg, and so she would take my brother and I, and we would go see a double header at a double
Feature.
film, and after the game was the movies were over, then we'd walk up to the bingo hall, and they would let us in. We weren't supposed to be there because that was gambling, but you couldn't see anything because the smoke was down that far off.
The whole room was so filled with smoke.
Yeah. And the games the bingo games would end about 9:30, and so we might stop at Bard's her Isley's and get an ice cream cone on the way home.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Who were the movie stars in the? Geez, that was the 50s, I guess, huh? 40s, 50s.
All the ones, Humphrey Bogart and all those people.
Yeah.
Plus, we saw Tarzan movies and
Yeah.
That was
a lot
Jack.
of
What was his
Western
name?
movies.
Weissmiller or something? Johnny.
Johnny Weissman. Yeah, good call.
Weissmuller,
Good
yeah.
call, Dovies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember in one movie, I thought, it's impossible. He dove off of the Golden Gate Bridge and survived.
That is pretty close to impossible if you've ever been out. Have you ever seen that Golden Gate Bridge?
Yeah, oh, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, that
plenty of
water
times.
down under there is swift.
Yeah, San Francisco's in not too good a shape
And
anymore.
it's freezing.
Distance down there, it's like hitting concrete.
Yeah,
Right.
And it's freezing cold water. So, how did you meet your wife? We didn't get to that.
Met her in 6th grade.
6th grade.
6th grade. Holy
What did your
moly.
classroom look like? Was it like a single room?
How
or
many
was it a
kids in
great
your
big
class?
school?
Single room, and it varied. Sometimes there was 35, sometimes 40 of us. In 6th grade, up until that time, we had one teacher for all day for every subject. But in 6th grade, then we got three different teachers.
Wow.
Every day we'd have 3 different teachers teaching. And but my wife moved in there because her dad had been drafted into the Navy. And so up above where our school was in Strabane, PA, I went to Alexander grade school for 8 years. And but up above there was a place we called Splinter Village. It was very cheap housing built
Low.
for the Alcoa workers during the war that worked down at Alcoa.
They're quick homes, like.
And they moved up in there, so she and her brother started going to school at Alexander, and she was there. Of course, I knew her family. I didn't know her as such until she moved in. But they always set her right in front of me in class. And she had pigtails, and I pull on them, dip them in the inkwell, and so on.
So now, hold up here with this inkwell. Is it that, did you put a fountain pen in there to get the ink out of and then write, or there was a feather? What did you use?
No, you used a wooden pen and it had a metal bib that you put in. And
Right.
You dip that into the
You dipped the
well.
metal bib in there.
Yeah. We weren't allowed to use ballpoint pens. They had come out in when we were in 6th grade,
Oh, really?
but we had to use
Old
regular
school.
old school pens and stuff. And through high school, through grade school, once we got to high school, ballpoint pens were
Hello.
okay.
Everybody, yeah, that was
So
the
you
new-
would take her ponytail and put it in the ink.
Yeah, dip it in the ink.
Oh, and she didn't like that, I bet.
She never seemed to complain.
No.
And she never told on me or anything else. And she was there in half of 6th grade and half of 7th grade, and then they moved to Peters Township. Her dad was out of the service, and they were building a house in Peters Township, the house that we ended up buying. And so after that, I would see her occasionally, and we'd wave,
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I was working for the metallurgist that I would go at nights. I would go across Route 19 to what was called then the Highway Steakhouse. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
I don't.
It was on Route 19 in Peters Township, right across from the Honda dealer now.
Okay.
Anyway, 19, there was no 79. That was 19.
Yeah, it
was the
went
main
all the way
road.
up there. Yeah.
And so the steakhouse was open 24 hours a day because the truckers would pull in and stop to get a meal and sleep in the parking lot for a while before they go on their way. And so she was going to school at business training college, which is now Point Park.
Okay.
And she would ride the streetcar out and then cross over and wait in the restaurant for her dad to come pick her up. And I was going across over and waiting at the little service station that was next to it for my dad to come pick me up. I saw her there and we waved. But I checked with her uncle, who was the same age as we were. I said, "What's Marion doing, dating?" And she said, she'd been going steady with this kid from W&J for the last 3 years. I said, "Well, I guess I'll back off of that. So we continued the wave in passing. And one day she came out and she said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "Yeah, you're Marion Fisher." And she said, "Well, why don't you stop in and talk to me?" And I said, "Because I hear you're
Dating.
Attached." And she didn't say anything. And a couple of weeks later, I thought, I'm going to ask her if she would go out. And I said, "Would you think about going out with me Saturday night?" And she said, "Sure." So we went to Canonsburg to the movie theater, saw Bedtime for Bonzo with Ronald Reagan and a chimpanzee.
And a chimpanzee.
Yeah.
Right.
And then afterwards we went to a restaurant, had a piece of pie and a Coke or whatever. Then came back, and so it was a couple of weeks before I could get a car because my next oldest brother was also dating at the same time. So I got a car and I asked her if she would go out, and she said yes. So I thought, well, this attachment for 3 years isn't too solid.
Right.
So she gave him the boot.
Yeah, basically, yes.
Yeah.
And she and I became an item, and she graduated from business training college. We went out to Churchill Country Club to the prom and stuff. That was before the Parkway was built, so he took 22 out.
Oh, wow.
Wow, long way.
And the old 22.
Yeah, it was.
Down by the mill and up over the hill, through over Squirrel Hill
Yeah.
and so on. We went to the prom, and I asked her to marry me a couple of weeks later. And she said yes, but then Uncle Sam says, Come on
over here.
Oh,
went to-
really?
So you were 18 then, you think, when you got engaged?
No, I was, it'd be 20.
20. Okay.
Yeah.
20. Okay.
So then you went to the military.
I went to the
so that
Army.
was all postponed, or
Yes. When I was in Fort Bliss, Texas, El Paso, I was assigned as permanent party there. I was cadre. I was an instructor. So we were going to get married, and she moved down there, and she could get a job down there. And I had a lot of friends there that were married, had their wives down there. So there would been a group of us to get together. But then when they sent me to Alaska, I said, well, we can get married. You can come up to Alaska. I'll go up. And I know that they have a big Army hospital, a big Air Force hospital there. You with your training, you'll be able to get a job, no problem whatsoever. And we can live off base. And her dad absolutely said, absolutely not. No daughter of his was going to be a camp follower. So, so we waited. And one more thing. I got up there in July, and we correspond with letters. And so at Christmas time, I thought, I will see if I can schedule a phone call on Christmas Eve. So I went over to the communication center and said, "Can I reserve 10-minute time on Christmas Eve at our time here?" Was because there's 5 hours difference. So I said, "I'll call at 4 o'clock in Alaska, which is 9 o'clock back here."
Mm-hmm.
So I reserved 10 minutes. I never even asked him what it was going to cost, so I had no idea what it was going to cost because it was radio telephone from Alaska to Seattle, and then it went over the phone lines. So that's why you had to reserve the time.
Right.
And of course, they said, we will be monitoring your call. So if you say anything that you shouldn't, we'll just disconnect you, and there'll be an MP waiting for you when you come out of the phone booth. So I walked over there, and as I said, I had no idea what it was going to cost. So out of my $35 a month, I saved up. I had $120 in my pocket. I figured that would definitely cover it. So when I finished my 10-minute call, which was 9 minutes of Marion crying and a minute of me talking to my dad and my mom, and her dad and mom, I went up and everybody was laughing because they could hear the phone call. I said, "What do I owe you?" And he said, $18.50.
Holy smokes!
So
wow,
to half a month of your savings.
Yeah, but he had 120 in his pocket. He's living large.
So I said, I think I'll walk over to the Airman's Club and see if I can get a case of beer, if they'll let me take a case of beer out, and maybe a couple bottles of wine. So there were 4 of us at the site, and you guys were well protected here. We were drunker than skunks. And we were on duty. I mean, we had anybody caught us, we'd all been court-martialed. But
you got to have some fun, right?
Yeah.
Well, you got to talk to your sweetheart that night, so you were probably feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What a life, man. It's beautiful.
So you came home, got married, and how long were you and Marion married? It was in the 60 years.
57 years.
57 years.
57 years and 19 days.
57 years and 19 days. Oh.
We celebrated our 57th anniversary, and 2 days later, she had to go to the hospital for a colonoscopy.
I remember this.
They ruptured her colon, and she died.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, they made when they were doing the colonoscopy, they perforated her bowel.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
It was sad.
A sad time. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was the best thing that ever happened to me, basically.
Oh. Yeah. You lived a blessed life.
Yeah.
You got 2 great kids, and she was great. And
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Oh, it was wonderful.
Story.
Thank you.
It was fantastic.